But why do they keep falling out with people? But they fell out with the royal family, Spotify ended. What is it? Why do they keep getting into a situation where they're, linking up with the royal family? Huge, linking up with Netflix, absolutely a $360 billion global empire. Why does it always end like this?
Well, I think there's two factors here. One, if you release absolute breakout, mega successful shows, no one will care. They will, in fact, let you be mean to them. If you bring the money in and the show is a dizzying success, then you can do what you want. But if the shows aren't happening, it's not working out, the content's poor, everyone starts the blame game, basically. So that's one factor. But the other factor is that both of them, and it's arguably a little more defensible with Harry because he came from a royal background, do kind of, in their own slightly different ways, act like they can do what they want. So with Harry, it was, pitching to Spotify the completely preposterous idea of starting a podcast about psychopaths in which, the guests would be psychopaths and presumably comfortable with their sociopathic nature and would talk about why Harry hadn't become a psychopath despite having a difficult childhood. So that was bonkers, and nobody, who had a proper concept of the media and how it works would ever have pitched that idea. But then also with Meghan, in this variety piece, there's lines about how she would just turn her camera off and disappear on Zoom calls.
Well, this is my point. Sorry, this is my point. Is why does it all end? If you read that variety piece, it seems like the reason it ends is, to be honest, because of Meghan.
Well, it does. It certainly takes more aim at her than Harry. But again, to your point as well, if this is the level of protection they would have had is if they had all of these hits. And that is the core problem. And there have, of course, been all of these articles. And I do think that Variety and the one that came out in the Hollywood Reporter about 18 months ago, which was very, very bruising to the couple. I think that these ones hurt the most because, of course, it comes from industry publications, which would traditionally have been a lot more sympathetic to them. But at the same time, this one, it seems to ring more closely with the claims from the end of the Spotify deal, when that executive said that, I'm not going to use the word that he used, but very colourful language calling them grifters.
Effing grifters.
My sensible.
We're allowed to say that.
It was, for me, this rang much more closely with that. And that is creating a narrative where, again, they do not have all the hits behind them to allow them to continue to just pave through Hollywood. But on the flip side, they're basically, people are saying that they're really difficult to work with. And that's the theme there. And it's from a number of sources now and a number of different outlets. And that is the problem with them moving forward, trying to build an empire post-royal life.
Well, there's two things here. Firstly, Jack, we've heard this previously, that Meghan and Harry are difficult to deal with when they were members of the royal family. But also, I've written down here, and I've put an asterisk next to it, because I think it's important to say, you're talking about the output. The Sussexes have not produced a single scripted project in their nearly 6 years at Netflix.
Yeah, so they went to America with dreams of being TV producers, and all they've really been able to do is try to monetize their lives through factual content. And what's particularly difficult for them about that is that, rather tragically, factual content is having a torrid time of it at the moment. Documentaries are really struggling. And fiction, drama is what's still alive. And they've not been able to land those dramas. And it does feel a little bit like the reason is because they actually didn't have any of their own really fantastic ideas for fiction shows. What they've had, what Meghan's always leaned towards is monetizing her life. Which is, for me, I think it's probably an exhausting thing to do, because there's then, you need to be able to go home and live your life, and for that to be separate. So I think, but the other thing that I think is really important not to miss here is that a lot of the clapbacks and denials in this Variety piece had come from Harry and Meghan's lawyer. There was specifically a legal letter. So they, in other words, they called in lawyers, set the lawyers on Variety, and it didn't work. Rather than killing the story, because that's why you call the lawyers. You call the lawyers with the hope that the lawyer can kill the story. And it didn't work. And instead, actually, it got some rather handy pieces of on-the-record content for Variety's coverage, to beef up their coverage. So if anything, it actually probably helped a little bit. And some of the material that's quoted to Michael Kump, their lawyer, is PR. He's not raising legal concerns. He's talking about PR issues like misogyny.
We're going to get into, their kind of fight back, particularly the Tom Bower book, etc., and the way they're behaving recently. But you bring up the lawyer there. That's really interesting, because he's talking about that they say it's inaccurate all the way through, or Netflix and the lawyers. Everybody's saying it's inaccurate. If I filed a story where every party involved said it was inaccurate, my editor wouldn't run it. So Variety must be so happy with their
Very
sources,
sure
by the
of
way.
their sources.
Do you know what I mean?
I had the exact same thought going through.
Yeah. It's like, well, this would never get past. My editor was saying, we can't run this. But Netflix keeps saying it's inaccurate. And this point here from the lawyer this is about... So I'll read what he said. He said, it seems calculated to play into the misogynistic characterisation of her bossing her husband around. And this is this idea that Meghan is sitting there next to Harry, kind of speaking over him, grabbing his thigh when he's talking, kind of interrupting him, and then, often disappearing on Zoom. And that's quite a... Not just the fight back, the clap back here, but that's quite a sad picture that has been presented by Variety.
It paints a picture of Harry as being someone who's quite uncertain in his own thoughts as well. Perhaps that's a dynamic that's really working for them. But maybe Harry and Meghan love that as their dynamic, and that's what he wants. I do think that there has been, of course, if you go back to all the time that Meghan's been in the public eye, and a lot of female figures, of course, misogyny can play a role. But again, in these articles, and in this Variety one in particular, these are a number of sources talking about their lived experience working with them. And I think that we can't just whack the misogyny filter on all of this. If there have been years of reports that are quite similar and from different outlets. So I think that yes, of course, that is something that we need to consider especially when we're speaking about women in the public eye. But at the same time, there has surely got to be some self-reflection when you are hearing the same sort of things over and over again.
And I think it's quite interesting that Harry chose to go on the record personally to refute that, saying it's categorically untrue. So that didn't come from a spokesperson or the lawyer, it came from him. And I think that shows the strength of feeling about it. And I think where that strength of feeling is coming from is not just how undermining it is to him to basically be told that you're controlled by your wife, but it's also the fact that that actually started life as a social media theory. The people who hate Harry and Meghan the most would share these video clips online for Instagram, YouTube, all the rest of it, of Meghan doing exactly as is described in the Variety piece. It's a piece of walking around, holding his hand, cutting him off mid-sentence, putting a hand on him. And they had this rather insensitive phrase for it, which was the Markle claw, which was the hand that she puts on him, which they said was to control him. And Harry hates it when social media conspiracy theories enter the mainstream, which is what has happened through this Variety piece. And obviously he'll think that it's misogynistic to characterise Meghan in that way, but it's also fundamentally misogynistic for these people on social media to be attacking her. But this represents a moment where the attempt to control those narratives and keep them out of the mainstream has collapsed and failed. And one thing that's quite interesting about it is I think actually there are times when Meghan does kind of jump in and dominate certain areas that actually she's not necessarily the best person.
You see it in videos. It's not a conspiracy theory. You do see it. I know what you're
people can
talking
watch
about.
The clips.
You see it.
They're
if you
all
watch
online.
a long clip, she will walk in. She will grab him.
Yeah. They're all the clips are online, so people can decide for themselves. Just go out if you search Markle Claw, then you'll get all of the content. But then another one that I wanted to bring up because it always struck me as completely bonkers was that they had this project, one of the two charity projects that they actually launched through Archwell. Was the Welcome Project, which was with Afghan refugees. Now, obviously, Harry served in Afghanistan, but Meghan took the lead on that project because she's a woman. And her view was no doubt that, well, they're women, I'm a woman, it's a big, female loving. But Harry served in Afghanistan. He fought in the war that they fled from. It makes absolutely no sense to exclude him from that project. And he clearly should have been there. It would have been a fantastic opportunity for him to share with them his stories of trying to liberate their country from the Taliban. But he was kept out of that project. It's bonkers.
It feels quite humiliating, not just to Meghan, but to Harry. I mean, as you pointed out, he served in Afghanistan, and now he's being characterised, or the characterisation that the lawyer was bringing up as just always, conceding to his wife in private meetings or, with meetings with other staff. That's the story that's getting out.
But it even goes right back to Megxit, and I'll use that term because it really summarises it perfectly. He's always been very frustrated by the narrative that Meghan is sort of leading him around. And he fought back in spare even against that narrative because, again, we've called it Megxit, and there was this perception that Meghan turned up and sort of said, let's get out of here. And he's been furious about that, so it goes all the way through. But you're right, it is humiliating. It paints a picture of a man who doesn't really know what he wants and isn't really capable of speaking up for himself or making decisions without her by his side. That's the perception.
Do you think it's accurate, either of you two? Do you think we're outsiders, we just get to watch what everybody else does, or we speak to people that maybe other people don't, or people that have met them will see them? But do you think this characterisation there that the lawyer's brought up, or that the Variety has brought up, do we think it's accurate?
I think there is a certain level of calm that you seem to get from him by having someone who is outspoken and who knows how to speak publicly. We've talked about on the show, she had this whole Hollywood career prior to meeting Harry. She knows how to get up on a public stage and speak her mind, and she has a lot of confidence in that way. For someone who he has said he was never quite comfortable, in the public eye all the time, I suppose there is perhaps some peace in having someone else that can sort of jump in a bit. But this does go well beyond that, because again, it's painting this idea of him sitting there and her. I think the phrase is recasting his thoughts.
I can
That's
see
embarrassing.
this happening. I can picture this in my mind's eye, that this what people are expressing that happened on Zoom.
It's embarrassing.